Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in for what is this? The fourth episode, maybe fifth episode of our brand new podcast, Shop Talk. We're super excited about this program. And as I've shared with many of our guests here before we go on the air, is the purpose of this is really to get the story behind the brand. Most of the time, in my opinion, at least, it's not what you do, it's why you do it. And I love having the opportunity right here with this brand new podcast to introduce many of the men and women behind the scenes at a lot of the most prominent companies, brands, manufacturers in our industry. And today we carry on this new tradition with a dear friend of mine, the one, the only Tommy Cunningham of Stroud Safety, checking in from Oklahoma City. Man, I guess you're right there in the showroom, right?
Sitting in the showroom, yeah.
Sitting in the showroom, buddy. Well, hey, I guess let's. How's life? How are things going?
Good, busy, real busy right now. So for me, it's a lot of back and forth. So it's every other week. I'm in Oklahoma City right now, which is a good thing. But no, we're busy, trying to spit out, whether it be Pro Charger blankets or whatever. We've got a lot of stuff going on. So
I was just looking at that, like the amount of products that you guys produce. I mean, it's you cover a lot of ground, and I know that you were talking about being back and forth. For those that don't know, you have another business in Kentucky, your machine shop, which I believe is where your beautiful wife Anita is currently, and bouncing back and forth. But that's kind of how this whole deal manifested, right? You're working at your machine shop and started making some parts for Stroud, and one thing led to another, and you own the deal at this point. We've discussed this a little bit before, but I would like to, maybe start there with the fire suppression. It's something that I don't think there's anything scarier for any race car driver, anybody involved in this sport, even crewmen, than fire. I don't know that there's anybody who's ever strapped into a race car that hasn't thought about fire, what they're going to do, what's going to happen. I know that it's something near and dear to the hearts of the people that kind of operate in the orbit of race car drivers, wives, kids, fathers, mothers. Let's just start there. You were making, I believe, like the nozzles for Stroud at your machine shop in Kentucky. Can you just kind of take it how that whole process started, and then we'll dive into even further into the fire suppression world?
Yeah, so that's kind of, we were trying to grow our machine shop business, and trip a PRI, I guess, I don't know, 16 or 17, something like that. And, got to talking to Bob and MJ at the time. She was with Stroud then. And they were needing a new source for fire suppression components. And so we started doing machine work for them. So that, that carried over for a while. And so with that relationship, then you get into close to the end of 19, and Bob had mentioned he's thinking about retiring, him and Ann, and so it's just a good opportunity. So Anita and I, a lot of times we'll travel together. The last couple of months, she's had to stay back whenever I come out here because the machine shop is pretty slammed right now too. We do a lot of OBS, aftermarket truck parts, and so that truck culture is killing it right now too. I mean, they are just as passionate about their trucks as race car drivers are about their race cars. So it's been good for us. Both locations. We got great people, and that's really the only way it works. If the team here at Stroud, we've got a great management team that takes care of any situation that kind of comes up to the girls on the floor. I mean, we are manufacturing that culture that we have down there. Is something that we really try to protect, so we tend to hire slow, and the girls kind of weed out any potential issues. But no, it's been good. The machine shop back home, there's three guys there, and Anita, that just change parts out and keep shipping them. We'll ship, I don't know, probably 300 or so packages a week.
I've been blown away by this square body Chevy movement. Not to derail the conversation, but you talk about something that has really picked up steam, and it's weird. It's a pretty wide. I mean, what is the year range? Because it's the little bit newer trucks are even kind of coming into favor, like what I would call like the SS 454 early 90s OBS trucks. This stuff's crazy right now.
Yes. Yeah. So the OBS trucks are what the majority of our products are geared towards. That's 88 to 98.
Okay. 88 to 98.
Yep. Then your square body stuff, which wrapped up in 87, So yeah, it's been a blessing for us. When I first started the shop, I used to chase plant work. I'd go into plants all the time. Doing this maintenance piece or that maintenance piece, and they beat you up if you try to make any money at all.
Yeah.
And then you get into car culture world, and man, just coming out here, to be honest, in Oklahoma, the car culture is phenomenal, and there's nothing cooler than I'll leave here, be headed downtown, to go to the apartment or whatever, and you get behind a car that's got a Stroud chute on the back of it. It's like it's a street car,
Isn't that crazy? I think Oklahoma City's got one of the like as far as like streetcar scene and fast street cars, and it's crazy for there not being like a national event track right there or something.
Yep.
I mean, I guess you got Tulsa down the road, but I mean, it blows my mind. And Noble, blows my mind the streetcar culture that exists there. DFW is much the same, where coming from the upper Midwest, you've only got 5-6 months maybe out of the year that you can really drive a hot rod or have a fast street strip car. But in this part of the country, I mean, them damn things are nearly usable year round. And I think it just really keeps them out and about. I can't count the number of times I've been cruising around here, driving somewhere, and whip into Sonic or Derek and see a car in the parking lot or whatever with a parachute on the back of it. It's kind of, I don't know, it makes my heart. I mean, I wasn't planning on going this way, but we were actually talking about this on our other show earlier in the week, that it feels like motorsports is enjoying like a real moment in the sun. Like I've had my dad and grandpa and everybody tell me like, oh, you missed how it used to be. And man, it used to the glory days and the golden age of motorsports. But I don't know. If you look at the interest that exists in Formula One, the people I see talking about Bonneville, every weekend there's drag strips all over the country, packed full of people, packed full of racers. Most importantly, the streetcar scene is alive and well. I mean, it just feels like this is do you see that in the industry? Like, is the industry up? I mean, SEMA's reporting that the industry is continuing to grow.
Yeah, I would think so. I think, pandemic kind of kicked that off a little bit.
Yeah.
A lot of people had a lot of little extra money and nothing, they couldn't go to work, nothing to do at home. Are you going to sit in the house with the wife and kids, or are you going to go out in the garage and work on that race car, and a lot of them opted for the latter, so, so it's been good, and like you're talking about, car culture, they do a lot of that cars and coffee stuff here. You'll see, there's an area, John was taking me by one the other day, and it's a huge mall, and and the cops will be out there, but they let them do burnouts, and they'll let when they're so it's you would see anything from a Lamborghini to like John. I mean, he's got that Mustang. It's I don't know, 1,400 something horse, but can drive it on the street.
Yeah.
Jeremy back at the shop in Kentucky, he's the same way. He's got an OBS truck that huge turbo in the bed of it. He'll pull his lawnmower and post like burnout videos, pulling the lawnmower down the road or whatever. It's awesome. I mean,
it really is, man.
It doesn't matter the budget. There's people that encompass it all, and it's great.
Part of the thing that blows my mind is like growing up, I remember like it was a big deal. I had an aluminum headed 406 in my little S10 pickup, right? And it had, Canfield angle plug heads on it. I mean, it was pretty hot rod, and it probably, I think I'm being generous saying it made 500 horsepower. You know what I mean? And it was pretty rowdy. I mean, it had a pretty radical cam in it, and it was streetable, but nowhere near what streetable means today. And I think about how it's one of my favorite conversations to have is like when I first was spending my own money and my own time on cars and whatnot. If you wanted to have a hot rod, I can't imagine what my dad experienced and things like that, because, in the 80s, if you had a hot rod car, that thing's got open headers, 13.5-to-1 compression, no power, nothing, manual brakes. I mean, it was like driving around, a lumber wagon or whatever that was really loud. And now, like you said, to your point about John Gentry's Mustang, it's nothing to see somebody driving a car every day that makes 1,000 horsepower or well over 1,000 horsepower. Yeah. How has that impacted your business? Because it's kind of an interesting thing that we've seen. It used to be primarily race cars that needed parachutes, race cars that needed roll cages, race cars that needed, 5-point harnesses or window nets. Now we're seeing all of that quite frequently in street cars. Late model Camaros, Corvettes, Mustangs, all these cars are a few bolt-ons away from being single digit 150 mile an hour trap speed cars. How has that impacted Stroud, or how has that affected the way you guys do business?
I think that that culture, the younger scene, you might say, it's not even necessarily a younger scene, but it's just a different generation of car people.
Yeah.
And I think, of course, a lot of them want to be safe. A lot of them, think about that, have that in the back of their head. So we do anything. Maybe we're selling sorts of belts that they're incorporating into a racing seat in a street car, or toe straps are a big thing. On the front of all these cars, we do a lot of toe straps, and the parachute. I mean, I'm going to say most of the guys have parachute driving on the street. They probably aren't pulling it. If they did,
Right.
by accident,
Right.
they're one ticket away from not doing that again. But we do see an uptick. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, we think that whether it be car culture or motorsports in general, it does seem like things are on the going up trend of a bell curve, So
I have to agree, and I'm seeing over your shoulder of a hero card of Ryan Martin, and I can't help but feel that Street Outlaws and No Prep Kings have had a significant impact on just being a hot rodder to like the mainstream. I remember I told this story several times, but like graduating high school, I was a weirdo, like the one that I had a loud vehicle that I drove to school every day, and I was kind of an outcast. I think Street Outlaws, No Prep Kings, no matter how you feel about, them glorifying an illegal act, whatever, let's table that conversation, save it for another day. Seeing people doing burnouts on primetime television, 6, 7, 8, 9 p.m., damn near every night of the week, I can't help but feel like it's had a very positive impact just on making it fashionable to be a car guy, or fashionable to have a shop towel in your back pocket, or know about racing. Have you seen that, or do you? And I know you support a bunch of those teams.
Yeah, there's. I mean, obviously, being here in the 405, there's a lot of them guys pop in, and Ryan being one of them. But it is. I think that regardless of how a person feels about Street Outlaws, they came around at a time when racing was hurting them. I mean, and so they brought around a popularity that really did give us a shot in the arm that we needed. And I say we, the industry. I think whether you're a track owner or a racer or whatever, you have felt the effects of what street racing has. What Discovery Channel and Street Outlaws has done. Drag Illustrated is no exception to the rule there too. I would think. I think it's been beneficial across the board. The controversy with NHRA and them, and I think at the end of the road, I think that helped both of them.
I think it may have.
Controversy goes good every once in a while.
It does. I mean, and it's funny because that's whenever those letters went out and NHRA started yanking all those the cast of the Street Outlaws licenses. For those that don't remember this, it was the talk of social media. It was the talk of the drag racing community. And I think it actually introduced a lot of the people that were up in arms and about it, probably had never heard of the National Hot Rod Association until this whole thing came about. So yeah, initially, definitely NHRA took some lumps over that deal. I have to kind of, you got to give them some credit for like trying to stand their ground and fight the good fight for safety and whatnot. I'm not saying it was like the greatest PR strategy, but to your point, it may have introduced the old NHRA oval to some folks that otherwise would not know anything about it. And I'm glad to see the way that whole situation kind of shook itself out over time, and everybody kind of knows that, like, hey, they're doing their thing, we're doing our thing. I would love to see at some point in the future more collaboration between those two brands, because I do feel I had this experience last fall in Texas. Within a couple of weeks, the Street Outlaws showed up at the Texas Motorplex, and then I think maybe 2 weeks prior or 2 weeks after, I can't really remember, the NHRA Fall Nationals were in town. And it was really interesting to see how different the crowds were, because people like to say that NHRA doesn't draw crowds like it used to. I beg to differ. I mean, the place was packed to the gills. We've seen multiple sellouts here in 2023 to start the season. And No Prep Kings, no doubt about it, gets a huge crowd. I honestly think the NHRA gets much larger crowds, to be honest, despite what people maybe think. But my point is more that they're so different. Like, it's a totally different group of people that show up at an NPK event versus an NHRA race. You see younger people, you see more families. I see a lot of kids that are not there because they grew up racing a car or grew up wrenching on a car, but because they love Murder Nova and all the tattoos and the long socks and the whatever. They've fallen in love with one of the characters of the show. So it would be cool over the course of time. And I think there's some efforts going on in the background right now to kind of bridge some of that gap, because the hope is that one of those kids that are standing along the fence, eventually is one of your customers, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I would agree. I think, from what I've seen, uh, whether it's, I don't know that it's a knowledge level, because I'm definitely not saying people that are go to a no prep Kings races is not, they just may not be as accustomed to a live race. And that's what I would see. So where, the NHRA spectators go in, and when you have an oil down or they're going between classes, a little bit of prep, they're expecting that. Yeah. Where maybe a no prep spectator, it's like, what are we doing?
What are we doing?
Yeah.
It's so true. I mean, but that takes time. It takes time for people to, it's an educational process. And I think that's a cool thing for us to kind of talk on, because I know that has been some of the discussions that we've had over the years, is the challenge that Stroud faces in educating people. I think let's start where one of the things that I'd like to talk about is you talk about that floor of girls down there. Whenever I went up to Stroud last year for the first time I'd ever been there, I have to tell you a little anecdotal story. My wife and I roll into the parking lot, we park, we go inside, and I was immediately taken by, this is like I know you have a large business, but it has the feel of like a small town business with everybody knows everybody. Everybody's got a relationship with everyone. And it really is like a hands-on deal. I guess in this day and age, and when you hear all these people talking about technology all the time and the self-checkouts and robots and AI and all these things, I guess, to be honest, Tommy, I kind of rolled in there expecting to see like a bunch of machines bolting stuff together and whatnot. And I was completely floored by the fact these are human beings stitching the American flag on a window net, stitching together the straps on I was just shocked, and I'm using my fingers, but I'm, commercial sewing machines. It was just a much different vibe in there than I thought it would be. I guess, a couple of questions. First off, were you surprised, about how hands-on that business was? I mean, you're just comparing it to your machine shop where you're plugging the next design into a CNC machine to have it run its course. This had to be like a really different experience, the human involvement in creating products at Stroud.
Oh, for sure. And the amount of pride that they take in their products. So the 2020 Tulsa race came about, and so like I'm going to say 99% of the girls on the floor had never been to a drag race. Average employee retention here is 16 years, and these people had never seen their product used. And so we took some tour buses, took the group up, let them spend the night and go to the race. And it was awesome, watching them there. Of course, we're racing at the time. So in between rounds, we'd have, parachute packing contests on our car, and the girls could walk around. They could tell who made what by looking at stitching, or,
really?
they were picking apart, people's product when they're looking, they're saying, okay, well, I wonder why this stitch broke on a window net or what. So, it was great for them to be there, and to see our product in action or being used, at what we would consider, a home track. Tulsa's an hour and a half from here, right. It's great. So, it was an awesome experience, which just drove home that pride level even more. It was when we'd pull up there, and I've never heard people from the stands in our little group. I do my burnout as I'm backing up. You can hear them chanting, and that was awesome. So of course they all had their Stroud shirts on, and there's real proud to be there, and brought their families, and we've got an awesome picture here in the showroom of everybody down at the other end, behind the car, and I don't know, there's probably 65, 70 people there. So it was great. We had a blast, and they did too. It drives home some of the pride. So one of the things that we did, so we brought in on all our products now. We just started this in the last year or so. There's little patches on things, and so whoever's in that department, you sign off on it. This product proudly made by, and so they're putting their name on it. And so the first girl that did, I recognized the way they talk. I wasn't here that day, but she was kind of teared up doing it. They've never put their name on the product that they're putting out. So we're proud of that. They're proud of it. We want them to be proud of the product they make.
Dude, I've had goosebumps for 4 minutes. JT is going to make fun of me in the green room, but like that, it really is incredible because we feel that way, and I think that, again, that's the reason I feel so strongly about this show, Tommy, is that like people need to hear you say that. Like, this is a group of people that are getting teary-eyed about signing their name to a window net or a parachute, or because they understand the significance of what that device represents, what that product represents.
Yeah. So, and that's, we've talked about it before. A lot of safety is reactive.
Yeah.
Whenever if one of the girls has an idea, we're always open, whether it be improving a process on the floor or even after going to the race, hey, if we did this different, it seems like it'd be easier for that guy to get in and out of the car. A different set of eyes every once in a while is not a bad thing to have. Sometimes people can get tunnel vision. And so,
and I think we racers are kind of bad about that, right? Where we've seen it done this way so many times that sometimes that fresh set of eyes that are untrained in the sense that they're not at the racetrack every weekend, I think that can be helpful, just people that maybe think about it differently than we do, or we've kind of glossed over something. It's you make a good point that we racers can get blinders on pretty frequently, not only on the helmet, but just in life. So what do you make of the Made in America mantra? Is something that's a real hot button, right? Especially at this kind of the climate in the world right now, politically, et cetera. And I know that that's a huge part of the Stroud Safety marketing message, is that these products are proudly made in America. Can you kind of just elaborate on that? And do you is the juice worth the squeeze? I mean, because I know that it's a challenge. I mean, I've heard this for years and years and years about how difficult it is at times to execute high level, affordable, and still maintain a successful business. Can you just talk about like how the Made in America mantra works at Stroud, and if it and how the customers react to it?
There's two group of customers. I think you've got the Made in America group that just want to buy Made in America irregardless. Okay. And then you've got folks that just strictly go off price. Maybe it's their situation where they have to go off price, but there's just so many things that go into a product. Even Made in America, it's almost impossible to source everything from here. The more this world becomes a global economy, the harder it is to get everything you need in one place. And I think if you asked, SFI, there's probably some companies that are bringing things in from overseas that it's a good quality product. But there's some companies that meet spec that's not the way we race. That's not the way we want our product to go out there. We don't want someone to say, well, I bought that seatbelt strictly off price, but if they would compare, maybe they would see the difference in the stitching. And I think that's just part of the trying to educate a consumer a little bit. Look at things like that. Look at the stitching. Look at the width of webbing. Look at different qualities of that product you're looking at. Stitching, something I keep going back to, but that's why our belts might cost a little bit more. Those types of things. I know in our car, I don't want the cheapest thing out there trying to keep me from getting hurt. And that's the way we think about our consumers a little bit. A lot of our customers, that they'll run our product, maybe it's because that's what their dad did. It's like the turkey in the pan kind of thing. Well, why do you always cut? That's what grandma did. And then grandma's like, well, that's just the size pan we had. So it's a lot of people use your stuff because that's what their dad did, or their cousin, or whatever. Whoever introduced them to racing, that's what they were using. And then you have some people that will dig into it and they'll be like, well, we were running this brand, but we start comparing things like stitching or how something's made, and it's like you can see a difference. So there has to be a difference in what it would withstand, and there is. That's why SFI does testing. There is a minimum. Everybody has to hit a minimum, but when you can exceed that for very little more effort, why not do that?
Right. Yeah. Why not? And it's interesting because I remember one of the things, and this was an interesting thing that I experienced at my dad's auto. I know you grew up in an auto repair shop too.
That's right.
And I would always find it funny, this this thing that happens psychology wise, like human psychology has always interested me. And I remember vividly, this happened all the time. Somebody would come into Buck Brothers Sunny Slope Auto, my dad's repair shop, and they would need to put new brakes on their pickup truck, right? And it was going to be $280 or whatever, maybe $500 if we had to put rotors on the front of it, and they would moan and groan and, they just labor over making this investment that they needed to make, ultimately make it, let's hope, but then the very next week, same guy, same truck could come in and want a set of 18-inch wheels or 20-inch wheels and some big old mud tires and gladly fork over $5,000 because it was the difference between needs versus wants. Like, we humans are weird, right? Does some of that exist? I mean, I have to believe it does in the safety realm, especially because all of us are trying to go faster, trying to make the car more consistent, trying to, all those things. We make more power, whatever, shave 1,000th off the time slip. The safety investments, I think it's got to be a little bit more of a challenge because you're not going to necessarily go faster, go quicker. It's something that you need to do. Do you guys fight that battle a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. Because you're going to have, we've got some Pro Mod customers that they want the titanium tabs on their belts, and can we take off a little extra webbing here if it's not necessary? Because belts in general are a standard length, and so when you got a little extra back there, if you get rid of that, you're saving maybe an ounce, but I've always, I seem to sweat more out whenever I'm at the track, but by the time, if I'm fortunate enough to get to a final, I've lost 7 pounds from when the weekend started. But no, it's a neat group to work with. And then you go total opposite to, you got guys that are saying, well, we just want our standard. We just want something standard. We have to run a 5-point belt, and give us something latch and link, and that's fine. So we've even had guys that want, like a 2-point, if they just got an old hot rod that maybe didn't have seatbelts in it from the factory, and so, you'll do something like that, Al Tucci,
Right. Yeah. Just want a lap belt. Hey, nothing fancy here. I just need, a little bit safer. Yeah. It is. I do think we were talking a little bit ago about how people like the Street Outlaws and No Prep Kings have, made it fashionable to be car guys. I got to tell you, I think there's a couple Pro Mod racers specifically. Lyle Barnett comes to mind, Stevie Fast Jackson. It seems that it's becoming more popular to have all the latest, greatest equipment, to have the latest, greatest helmet, have the latest, greatest head and neck restraint, have the latest, greatest fire suit, have the greatest, belts, window net, all those things. Because I think that there's like a hardcore outlaw culture that exists in drag racing, and we all fancy ourselves tough guys and badasses or whatever, and I don't need that. But it does seem like it's becoming more fashionable to have all the latest, greatest equipment, which is a fantastic thing. But it's taken that educational effort. Do you ever go out to the racetrack and like see something and like cringe? I'm sure sometimes with this new experience that you've had the last few years at Stroud, can you maybe share with some of those with us? Don't name names. I don't want to call anybody out, but do you look at like going to the races through a totally different lens now that you're on the safety side of things, Tommy?
Yes. And it's kind of twofold. So after Lyle's wreck, the first DI party after Lyle's deal, that's where I met Lyle. I never didn't, we were upstairs and I think, I don't even remember the name of the place she used to have it at before this new location, but
the Blue. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Blue. Yeah.
So, and so he did a video, like a little, I don't even remember the safety company he was working with, but and so it changed the way I raced. Back then we were, I don't know, 411, 412, kind of like a little heads up group that we raced around home and more regional. And, I went because I was one of those guys. I didn't even realize it. I was, just because of the way I grew up. I think we evolved to running that fast. It wasn't like we set out to start racing that fast. And so, we go to tracks where they weren't looking at anything that you had on the car. So, I had the thin suit, tennis shoes, and I had a pair of gloves on, but it wasn't, that might've been 5s,
Right.
But after Lyle's deal, it was an immediate switch for me. I don't know what it was about the way he presented himself or talked me through that race, and then talking to him at PRI, we totally changed our deal, that was my first 20 suit after that. I started wearing boots after that. I only have one set of everything I've got, as far as, at the end of a race. So why take a chance on something like that? Yes, there's an expense, and I understand that, for some people it costs more. Set out a season, set out a few races, set back some money and protect yourself, because most of us, we're not just racing for ourselves. It's not like, we're not going home and don't have anybody to worry about. There's
Yeah.
people back home that need us to be able to go to work on Monday morning. So yeah, that's where we're at.
It's an interesting time because, like, as much as and I'm glad we're doing this, because I do think these things need to get talked about, because you don't have to be going. You don't have to be in a 3-second, like your Mustang. You don't got to be in a 360, 210 car to get hurt. We see it quite frequently. I mean, there was a really bad crash in St. Louis last year, and I can't remember all the details at an NMCA race. One of my dear friends was working tech at that event, and he goes, it was like an 11-second quarter-mile car, not crazy exotic hot rod, that got out of shape and hit the wall on the big end and went over the wall, and all hell broke loose, and I think it's important, especially going back to what we talked about to start the show, is, as fast as cars are getting, I'm hesitant to use the word easy, but it's easier than ever to go fast. I mean, you don't have to have, you don't got to be Rick Jones, you don't have to be a super tuner to get one of these cars, even a street car, to be a really capable, dangerous hot rod. What is that? What can we do more of? Is it just talk about these things more? Is it, because Lyle, I think really his story resonated with lots of people. I mean, I hate to say it, and Lyle and I have had this conversation many times, that it's such a tragedy what happened to him. And I hate it. And every time I see him, and we spend a lot of time together. We talk a lot, and it tugs at my heart, every single time I see him and know what he went through and what his family went through. But at the same time, there's so much good that has come from that. And I think it's taken a real special guy to take a tragedy and turn it into a relatable story that he's shared repeatedly, to try to encourage people that, hey, go the extra mile, put your visor down, do the things that you're supposed to do. Because, I mean, I'm going to be honest, I've been to the track 2 weeks ago and seen guys jumping into 5-second door cars with shorts on, and, it's not, and I don't know how. There's a certain amount of that I suppose, Tommy, I guess, is always going to be there. You can't save them all. But I do think we need to remind folks that we talk about how expensive it is. But if you think about it, like, comparatively, Chad, it's not that expensive. Like a head and neck restraint, good helmet, good fire suit. I mean, you're not talking about 10 grand.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, set out a couple races.
Yeah.
Whatever your expense would be hauling halfway across the country. I mean, if your budget's that tight, set out a race or two. Because I would almost wager that there's probably someone counting on you providing past that. For the large percentage of racers, there are people that count on you going to work that next week.
Yeah.
Not everybody's. I mean, you guys were talking about not long ago the number of actual professional racers out there that race, and that's strictly all they do. There's not a whole lot anymore.
No.
So
very few. And I mean, and that group includes people like John Force. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's such a small group of people that race for a living that I saw a post on Facebook over the weekend. I can't remember who made it, but it was like a racing friend down here in Texas. And they kind of were polling their network, saying, how much do you spend on average just going to the races? Like, not fixing anything, not repairing anything. And it was just amazing to see all these people chime in. I got to fill 6 nitrous bottles, 2 gallons of fuel, diesel, gas for the generator, whatever, $900, $1,500 just to leave the driveway. There was tons of people who put right around $1,000 to leave the driveway, right around $1,000 to leave the driveway. And to your point, Tommy, yeah, man. I mean, you skip 2 races, stay home 2 hot weekends in July, 3 hot weekends in July, and you can call up Stroud Safety and have most of the latest, greatest.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to, and there are a lot of good safety companies out there, a lot of good product out there. So whatever your brand is, it doesn't matter. Don't set out 2 races just to buy our stuff. We'd love for you to, but,
right.
Just commit and do it. I think you're right. I think conversations are a good way to at least keep it in the forefront. I think a lot of times people see a rule change for safety and there's, knee-jerk reactions, all they're doing is making safety companies rich. Well, it takes things like Lyle's crash to open some people's eyes. It opened my eyes. It takes things like, Stevie's had some bad wrecks. Todd Tudero's had some bad wrecks. They learn through all that. Thank God they're all okay. It's just, it's those things that If you can't learn, if you can't make changes from those incidents, Erica, the crash she had when she was trying to pro mod, a lot of things, a lot of rule changes came from that. Some people would argue they're not all good. Some people would argue that they're all, whatever, but you have to learn from that stuff. I think that's
I
how
agree.
we keep moving forward.
We have to. What do you think is so some of the things that I hear about, right? And these are just like shop talk. What a great opportunity to use the name of the show right there. But things you hear, bench racing, shop talk, like why, Tommy, can you just literally educate me? One thing I hear racers complaining about is like, oh, I got to get my belt. I got to get new belts. What are some of the, why is that? Right. I mean, why? Because I would love for people to maybe leave today's show with like a little bit of understanding of why some of these things have to be recertified, why some of these things get sent in, why some of these things you've got to replace. Can you just kind of explain some of those nuances so maybe people understand the thinking and the logic behind it? Because I believe people think it's just this big racket, right? Like we're all just trying to make money and get people to send their stuff in for recertification, but it's really much deeper than that. You kind of, I mean, don't get me wrong, everybody's trying to make a living, but I do think it's easy to think it's some sort of conspiracy.
Yeah. Well, so what happens is a lot of these cars, they see a lot of time sitting in the sun, so the sun breaks down anything from the carbon fiber body, if it's that type of car, to the stitching in a window net or the stitching in a seatbelt. That stuff, when that much exposure to sunlight and it starts to break down. That's why you see things have to come back in 2 years and they'll come back here. And so, a set of belts that come in and we're looking at stitching really close. If they have to be re-webbed, we can re-web them, use your existing hardware, that type of thing. It's just, it's all in an effort to try to make sure that the end user is getting a product that's, as close to as safe as when they took it out of the box is what it is, a year and a half later, 2 years later, and we can do that by getting our hands on it and taking a look at them. So, the girl that does the research, like for seatbelts, for example, she's the same one that makes them. So, I mean, she's, her day is spent making belts. I mean, so, she knows what the stitching is supposed to look like, so if we have to take a set of belts back apart, that's, it's not a big deal. You're going to be out a week or two, maybe. Do it in off season. What are you doing in November anyway? Unless you're racing down in Florida, your
right.
season's, you're pretty much done. So
I see that a lot. You mentioned that to me one time. I can't remember what the context of our conversation was. I think we were at breakfast and we were talking about how many times have you walked up to a race car and seen the window net? That thing used to be black, but now it's kind of like a light brown because it's been in the sun for eons. I mean, that's what you're referring to. And that's something that I think is, I don't know, we probably all spaced that, like, hey, it doesn't mean it's been tugged on or it's been stretched or it's gotten cut or it's gotten nicked. The sun's deteriorating the quality of this. I mean, it's not,
that's right.
And God knows it's going to be expected to perform its job. In the case of an emergency, it is kind of an interesting thing. What are the things that you look for? I mean, why don't you give us, for those that don't know, you're an avid racer yourself. You're a member of our cast of characters down at the World Series of Pro Mod earlier this year, one of our invitees. You've got a 360 eighth mile car, runs well over 200 miles an hour pretty much every time you let off the button. Can you kind of take us through some of your safety, like your safety protocol, anything that you look for when you go racing? Maybe some of our racers can develop something of a checklist based off of how you handle things when it comes to going to racing.
So for me, it's Anita and myself, really, because I don't get in the car. I'm going to say since we started running Pro Mod, I don't get in the car that I don't get assistance getting everything buckled in, and then there's going to be a slew of people saying, oh, you shouldn't race if you can't, whatever, so, for me, it's the extra set of eyes, like we were talking about. I buckle my belts. I do all of that. She's make sure everything's tight before she closes the window net up. There's just a lot of preparation that we do. I have a couple of prayers. Usually someone from Racers for Christ comes through, and there's a sense of ease that comes over me that every time that they pray over me, and it's just part of my routine. And so when those things happen the same every time, I feel like I'm able to hopefully cut a little better line. Maybe things go smoother on the track. Me and my competitor make a safe pass, and neither one of us get into each other. At the end of the day, we want to kill each other on the line, but you want you want to make sure everybody's safe to end, and because there is a lot of friendships, there is a lot of bonds you have with people. I've for me, it's going back to your question. We'll start with getting dressed. Socks, underwear, my suit. Of course, it's one piece. Our new boots. Our boots. Then get in the car. A lot of times I wear an underglove. I think that's probably going to end up being a rule at some point.
Right.
So I've tried to start doing that just to make sure that I'm acclimated. And then our outer glove. So that's in the car. Usually about 6 cars back, I'll take in, give me one last drink of water, head sock, where I got the head and neck restraint on, belts on, helmet on, hooked up, radio hooked up, fresh air. I think that's something that's understated. Those late night races, and the majority of us racers, it seems like we don't always get to race in the daytime. So you get a lot of fogged up lenses, there's some good products out there to help with that, and so, we try to follow the same routine. And if everybody does the exact same thing every time, then it eliminates our possibility for errors. It takes us a while to incorporate a new team member, because we do have, we're a volunteer team, you might say. We got some folks that travel from home, don't miss a race, and they work their butts off. Dad and mom and Anita, we're a non-recognition group. If you're looking for recognition, you're racing with the wrong team. But so we do it because we love it, enjoy it, and so there's a lot of that you want to make sure that you're able to give a hug at the end of the track, when the pass is over, as opposed to having an issue. And I raced with really loose belts, and I had an incident, and now I'm not around anymore.
100%. And that, I think that so many times, like every successful racer I've ever encountered, like if there was one common denominator, it would be that routine. They are dedicated to a routine, and that routine is not just in the staging lanes. That routine exists like perhaps from the time they leave the house. There's a lot of the same people involved. There's continuity of the cast. The people that are involved, the team's going to be the same or as close to the same as possible. And you don't have to, so frequently I've seen a team struggle, and you start to look at like where the issues are or whatnot. And it's not always with like the equipment. They've got the best stuff, they've got great, and it's not like the guy can't drive or whatever, but you do look at some of those things where like, oh man, they've got different people here every weekend. Every time I see him at the track, they got different help. And that some of the times it's unavoidable, right? I mean, I remember my dad has experienced this in recent years. Drag racing will kick your ass, right? I mean, it's a lot of work. It's, late nights, early mornings, long drives, hot days, all those things. And my dad, it's funny because you get someone to go racing with you a few times and they're like, I think I'm going to skip the next 60 or so. That's a lot of work, because I don't want to do it anymore. But so I totally understand how hard that can be, but it can really be a secret to success, is just getting that continuity and getting the same people involved with what you're doing. And I've always, like, I love a thrash. Like if I'm at the racetrack and I see somebody like swinging, I want to help, right? I just love that energy of that. And it's kind of actually like a guilty pleasure of mine. But as I've gotten older and respect the craft more, I recognize that you're best to get back, because everybody knows what they're doing in this moment. There's a time when it's, I mean, I've seen several instances where it's like, hey, they just need bodies, people to put Zeus's in, people to pick up stuff, but when you see a team in the midst of those moments, typically a good one's got, everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And by helping, you may just upset the apple cart, right? You need to almost stay out of the way. I kind of derailed myself, but there was something I want to talk about, Tommy, here as we kind of wrap up. That was perhaps I was asked for the most recent issue of the magazine. It was kind of a big moment for me because it was the first time I was ever in the magazine, right? It's like owned the magazine for almost 20 years. First time they ever wrote about me. And it was an interesting thing. But Kayla Zadell, our digital content director, she asked me, like, what were you most thankful for? Or what were you the most excited about when the World Series of Pro Mod was over? And it didn't take me 2 seconds just to tell her that above all else, that everybody was safe. We had record-breaking competition, the closest pro mod field in the history of the world. So many things, that went really, a great crowd, wonderful weather, a really great event, in my opinion, something I'm very proud of. But the fact that everybody went home to their families and we didn't have a bunch of destroyed machinery, we didn't have anybody hurt, that was the most important thing to me. And I'm just curious, Tommy, how has your worldview changed? Because I know how close you are with so many of these racers. I see the way people respond to you and Anita and your mom and your dad, and can't not mention Mama Sue here. You guys have built a real tribe out here, and you're a part of a big tribe. How has that impacted the way you guys operate at Stroud? I mean, I know that passion was there before you took over and purchased Stroud there at the end of 2019, but I'm just curious how that kind of impacts your day-to-day operation, Tommy, the relationship you have with these people in the industry.
That's a kind of it's a hard road to walk a little bit sometimes, because you do become really good friends with a lot of these people, because you spend a lot more time at a track sometimes than you do in your hometown or whatever, and so you do build relationships. And when somebody's like, hey, I need a window net, or I need this, or I need that, and there's 90 in front of them, it's kind of hard sometimes. It's like, hey, it's hard to put you in front of, I mean, they oh, but we're buddies. Well, yeah, we're buddies, but so those conversations happen on a regular, or they'll call out here and sales. It's like, oh, it's going to be 3 weeks or whatever, and so then I'll get a call. It's like, hey, I thought you might be able to do something. It's like, yeah, it's like, really, Yeah. So yeah, you do get those, and we we try to do anything we can, to make sure that people are able to race and race safe. It's a difficult stance to take at times, and we do have some good relationships with a lot of good drivers. Brandon Pez is, we've worked together on a couple of different things, for an engine diaper for their program, or on some different belt styles that he likes a little bit. He's a very much, he eats, sleeps, breathes like a lot of people do racing, and wants to figure any kind of advantage that might be there. How do I incorporate that? And so he, of course, and then tuning. I mean,
Oh yeah,
he's the guy. And so, but there's a lot of people that are the guy. There's a lot of those people out there. So we try to be careful. I don't. I try not to extend. Oh yeah, we can get you a suit turned out tomorrow, and it's
right.
Not possible.
Yeah.
It's because everything is if I go and stop the girl in a suit to start a new suit, it still takes her, a week or 2 weeks to get it done. Then you got embroidery. I mean, there's things that it's just not possible to do. I mean, you can only
some of this stuff is not meant to be done in a hurry, and I don't think you really want it done in a hurry. I just find it interesting because the companies that I think really have stood the test of time and made their mark in our industry are oftentimes, and I'm not saying you have to be a drag racer, you have to be, a hardcore to be successful, but I do point to people that spend a lot of time at the racetrack as having this kind of upper hand, just being a part of the community and having a shared respect, a mutual appreciation for what we're doing out here, the dangers, the nuances, the pressures and stresses. So I can't help but feel like you're being a part of the group, a brother in arms, makes such a difference. But I'm sure it's also a little bit of a heavy is the head, because is there a certain pressure that comes with looking around the pits and seeing Stroud shoot, Stroud belch, Stroud suit, because you're that's on me. Keeping that guy safe's on me.
Oh yeah. Showed up at Tulsa. I guess it was last year before, first race of the year, and one of the racers there, prominent pro mod guy, pulled chutes, picked the car up off the back, back in the car, come off the ground. He come around. Of course, that's the first thing he said, man, your chutes picked the car up. I was like, how long have you ran our chutes? He's like, I've only ever ran our chutes. I said, so what changed? And so they go back. Yeah, so if you use them every run and you've used them for 15 years, what changed to make it do that? And so they go back and look at video, and the chute got underneath the wheelie bar. So it's that's what changed. So it just doesn't. Things don't just. If you've used the same chutes for the last 2 seasons, you hadn't had a problem. something else happened, So, but the immediate gut response was, oh, the chutes, almost put me in the wall. Well, something had to happen, Chutes are dumb. They just go where the air is,
Right.
uh, you know, but yeah, so there is that, and I do watch, you'll see people run, other brands and whatnot, and that's part of it, we're proud to have our stuff out there,
Can you talk a little bit about the spare parachutes specifically? A couple of things. I know you guys have resources available. One of the things that I have heard a lot of, like, oh, I don't want to pull my parachutes because I don't want to have to pack them. And I actually, a dear buddy of mine, I asked him if he pulls the chute on his car, and he says, no, I don't know how to pack it. It's been on there since I bought it, and I don't know how to put it back in there, so I just leave her pinned up, And I thought to myself, that's not good, because oftentimes you don't need the parachute to stop. You need the parachute to stop if something goes wrong, right? Throttle hangs, brakes fail, whatever, all the various things that can happen. You're going to wish that you pulled it every single time, because it'll be the time that you've got one of them pinned or didn't pull them, that the brakes fail or that something else goes wrong. What can guys do? Because you shouldn't leave your parachute packed indefinitely anyways, right?
No. Well, not only that, you leave it, during the off season, you always want to unpack them anyway, because they'll get hard, and so if it's a spring pilot, the spring will start to get weak because it's under compression all the time, so there's a lot of things you want to do a little bit of maintenance, you're doing maintenance on the motor, why not do a little maintenance on your safety stuff? But yeah, you just want to make sure that, like on packing, it's not too bad. You just do it a few times. I'm guilty of. We just raced last year, and I was going to show one of the guys. I was like, "I just look how easy this pack." It took me forever. I stuck my foot in my mouth. And, it's one of those instances. But if you have if it spins a lot or something, it really winds up, or you get tied a knot, or if the guy at the end of the track, if they don't know and they just roll it up, and then you try to get it unrolled as best you can. There's all of the things that happen that that you have to try to just take your time and figure it out. If it takes you 15 minutes to pack both chutes or 10 minutes to pack, just do it. And the more you do it, the better you're going to be at it. It's not rocket science. So.
Oh no, and it's like there are videos on YouTube. I know you guys have a great video of like how to pack a chute, and those are you have to know how to use this stuff. Don't just buy it for looks. Don't just buy it for cool factor or whatever. So it's going to be neat cruising down the highway. If you've got a car that's running that fast, fast enough to need to have one on it, probably fast enough to need to use it.
Yeah.
It is kind of an interesting thing. What do you make? I know you talked about parachutes getting under. What are some of like the biggest issues that you guys solve for racers when it comes to parachutes? I know you've talked about bigger chutes, various size of chutes. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the nuances of parachute? I find it interesting. You guys run and test to see how many G's this thing is going to pull based on speed and weight of the car.
Yeah, so we've got some formulas that we can use, and of course, speed and weight's how we size it initially. But if you got a guy, you may have a guy that's really likes a lot of hit, and so they always want a lot of hit. Well, maybe they don't want to run a huge chute; they still want a lot of hit. So we can change vent sizes, and so we've got kind of like an application we can plug our numbers into, and it tells us where our G-force, where our G's are going to be. And so when we change vent sizes and see, so maybe we can go to a smaller chute, close the vents up, still get you the same amount of stopping force it would have if it was the bigger chute. So there's different reasons racers will want to do that. So as opposed to just getting the standard off the shelf, this is the chute that we would recommend. If you'd like to tailor it one way or another, that's doable.
That's a fairly common occurrence, Tommy.
Some racers, yeah. Some racers, we've got a guy, and I'm not going to say a name, you know him. He likes it to hit so hard. He tells me they keep spare steering wheels in the trailer. He said, it's nothing for me to bend a steering wheel over. I was like, golly, that is so hard, because that's not the way.
Forgive my ignorance on this, but like, what is there like a threshold for like a hard hit? What is a G-force wise, or like what do you guys look for? What classifies a really hard hit? Like, what's that guy looking for number wise? Is there?
Oh, I would think anything over 3 would be a pretty good hit.
3 G's, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, because you're definitely going to feel that, and I think that might be what might be what more of a racer's looking for. They just want to feel it to know that it came out. Yeah. Myself, I used to think I wanted to feel it when it came out. Anymore, I realize it because the car is slowing down.
Right.
And so I think if you
Is that a
was to
reps
ask,
thing? Just you've made so many
I
times.
really think it is. And I'm sure someone will correct me, but I just think that you can realize that, well, I'm slowing down, the chutes are out. I'm going to give it just a touch of brake and get off the track. When I'm having to get in the brakes a lot, then I know something happened, and I'm guilty every once in a while. If we get on a long track, I might not pull the chutes every time, and I should, because, you don't never know when you're going to have a problem. But I'm just as guilty as the next guy not doing it. But yeah, I mean, so as far as going back to your, we can tailor a chute to hit harder, or not as much, similar to what we do for Bonneville. There's a big difference in a parachute for a 2,400 pound pro mod as opposed to a 7,500, 8,000 pound semi trying to run, 350 mile an hour or whatever, 400. So, it's, you do things different with line lengths and size of chute. So, yeah.
How does that right now? And again, I just want to tell you how much we appreciate your time, Tommy. Thank you for spending some time with us today. I think people are going to find this very interesting. One of the things that I've been, it's been a big news conversation here in the last couple of, oh my goodness, for the last several years, if I'm being honest, but especially in the last couple of weeks, we've got NHRA Pro Mod cars that are routinely over 2,700 pounds. Encroaching. There are those of them that have exceeded 260 miles an hour in the quarter mile. What is that a unique challenge in and of itself, building a product for that application? I mean, because some of the tracks that the NHRA Tour rolls into are more than long enough. There are, there's variances. What does that challenge look like here in 2023? Because the cars aren't getting any slower; they're only getting faster.
No. And then you take like Mark Mickey, that dude's, he's setting the world on fire as far as speed, and no, I mean, there are, that's where we can, that's where being able to tailor that can make a difference, because I know, like, even us, if we go to a short track, it may have a short shutdown. We want to go with a pretty big chute. And
so you actually change chutes?
Oh yeah.
Is that fairly common?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. We fortunate enough, that we can keep chutes in the trailer, we've got a couple of different sizes in the trailer that, if I was to need more, we can swap it out, but most of the tracks we go to are long enough. You don't have to worry about it. But, occasionally you go to more of an outlaw style track that may not have the shutdown that some other tracks do. You put a little bigger chute on it to catch more air. But, what
is the typical lifespan of a parachute? Is there like a documented?
No, it really depends on how often it's used. I mean, if you're one of those guys that you pull your chute, you get off the end of the track and you drive it all the way back to pits, you're going to go through it a whole lot quicker than if you're dragging it on the ground.
No, plenty of those guys. Yeah. No shame in that game. Right. Sometimes you ain't got no help, right? Yeah. We were just talking about that. Now, so, okay, well, in closing notes here, Tommy, I guess just looking forward, what's on the horizon? I mean, I know you guys released a new fire boot, which, again, as methanol is becoming more and more prevalent, in various applications, super important. Why don't you just give us a quick update on how things are going with your new boot? I know a lot of effort went into that. I think you sent some of your teams to learn how to shoemaking school. I'd love to hear, cobbler school. I'd love to hear a little bit about that and kind of maybe what's next before we cut you loose, or what you have your eyes on. I know you're a problem solver, so give us an update on the boot real quick before you tell us what you're working on next.
Yeah, the boot went over. It's going over really well. We're already making some revisions on things, trying to make it better. It's so we're looking at an insert on the inside of the boot to give it a little bit more heat resistance. There's it's a heat resistant sole now, but anything we can do, the whole result of anything safety related is to buy a driver more time. That's belts, fire suppression, parachutes, all of it. You're just trying to give the driver a little bit more time for when there is an issue. It's a dangerous sport. There's going to be issues, so things like that. You have to use just as much time as you can. And so with that, the boots, they were received very well. We've, at this point, I couldn't tell you how many pair we've sold, 200 or 300 pair probably. And they went over crazy. But moving forward, I think we'll be able to say that we're going to be in the head and neck restraint game So we'll have the new head and neck restraint. Probably put it out there maybe the month before PRI, and it's a game changer, total game changer.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, it goes a lot more than just, you're doing a lot more than keeping somebody alive at this point. Head and neck restraints have been around for a long time. So if you can improve upon what's already been out there, to where now we can start to fight the battles of concussions, which is the kind of the approach that we're taking. It'll be a game changer for us. We're real excited to move forward. That it's nothing that we're building in house. So that's something different for Stroud too, because up until this point, that's why we stopped selling boots for a while, and we don't sell gloves right now. If I always had that in my mind, if I couldn't make it, I didn't want to sell it because I couldn't control the quality. With the head and neck restraints, it's a little different. It's that the quality is there, and the testing proves it. I mean, it's a phenomenal product, and we're excited to be to be able to have our name on it.
That's exciting to hear, man. I'm curious, and I didn't mean this to, but you said something, and you've said this to me several times, and I'd love to kind of use this as an educational moment, but kind of leave our audience with this. You've said to me before that, like, you're in the business of buying racers' time. Can you, and I don't know why we didn't bring this up sooner, but can you kind of reflect on that momentarily? Because I think there are people out there that maybe don't understand like a 5-layer suit versus a 20-layer suit and some of those nuances. It all boils down to how much time you're providing the driver, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So, as far as, what we see, our SFI 20 suits, that's the most amount of time that we, for a suit that we make. That's going to be anything that's like a methanol forced induction. Okay. Then you go back to like a 5, which would be almost mandatory on any racing. If you're going to sit in the car, you're probably going, whether it be a jacket or a jacket pants or whatever. So yeah, your goal is to give a racer seconds. You mentioned, we talked about Lyle a while ago. What if he had 5 less seconds? Would we have these conversations? And so you need all the time you can get, with a positive factor of, I've got too much time over here, so I'm in the good, because your safety crews, NHRA does an exceptional job with their, with the safety safari, but most racers, including myself, we don't race where we're going to have that type of support, so you really need to, you need those seconds. They're valuable seconds. If you're depending on someone to get maybe even down from the starting line with a fire extinguisher to get to you, you need the time, So, a fire suppression system, while it might not put the fire out, maybe it's kept it batted down enough to just give you those seconds you need to get out of the car. That's,
and I think a lot of people don't, and I think some people maybe don't, they need to hear it phrased like that. And I appreciate it. And because I think this is a great way to kind of close, is that, that's something that all those racers that we've been talking about that exist in the back of the track, type of racing, or the no prep racing or whatever. Oftentimes, anybody really who's operating outside of that NHRA safety safari, outside of that realm of your typical NHRA national event, which is the bulk of racers, you're dependent on a guy getting from the starting line, to you, likely down track with a fire extinguisher, someone getting from the shutdown, a fire, even a well-manned fire team or a response team, they're stationed in the shutdown more than likely, and they've got to get to you. So every second counts, and it's not just about, it's not whether it's going to save the car. It's about giving you a little bit of extra time to get out, man. Really appreciate the insight, Tommy, and I'm excited, man, for you guys. New things on the horizon. Feels like things are all headed in the right direction, and I think we did a good job here today of reminding people that it isn't what you do, it's why you do it. And you're a racer yourself who's passionate about keeping your friends and family and everybody around you safe, and everybody you spend time with at the racetrack. So, Tommy, thanks a bunch, man. I really appreciate it. Real quick, hit us with Stroud's website, social handles, anything else where people can follow along and get involved with what you're doing at Stroud.
Of course, we're on the World Wide Web, StroudSafety.com. Facebook pages as well. So we're not the world's best at doing social media updates, but we try as good as we can. Website's live and open right there. You can always call here to sales. John and Amber would be glad to take care of you. technical advice, you're going to be able to get it right there. So, yeah.
We appreciate it, man. Thank you more than you know, buddy. I appreciate it very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Cunningham, Stroud Safety. Appreciate you, buddy. The latest issue of Shop Talk. We'll see you guys.